Hey guys, welcome to Faith and Fabric. This is Jen Frost. And today we're going to be taking a look at how to foundation paper piece. Foundation paper piecing can be an intimidating thing if you've never done it before. I have found it to become one of my favorite ways to stitch because you can make some of the most intricate designs when you paper piece. And that's what I wanted to share a little bit with you today was how we're going to do that. So today we're going to be using the quilting crab example. So these are the little crabs. This is part of the crab pattern that I've got out there. I actually have a quilt along starting on May 1st that we're going to be doing together. If you would like to join, I would love to have you there. You know, it's kind of a spoof on life right now because I think we're all feeling a little crabby. At least I am. So we're going to be showing you today, I'm going to show you today how we're going to make this. I promise I'm not going to make you sit with me the whole time making this, because I don't know if I can have a monologue that long while I do it, but we're going to be going over bits and pieces of how to foundation paper piece. So I hope the lighting is okay. I kind of put the camera back a little bit today so you can kind of see my workspace and what I'm doing. So if there's things that you need, things you need me to go back over, just shoot a comment in there. But hopefully you can kind of see, and I'll try to show you up close what I'm doing as we're working through it, okay? So in this, I'll show you here, in this little crab quilt pattern, the pattern comes, if you buy it from the website, it comes with two different ways to make it. Now there is the rotary cutting way, which is very complicated because of the angles. Like you can see, they're not all perfect little half square triangles. There's a bunch of little wonkier shapes in here. I mean, obviously you can probably make it work with the rotary cutter, but the foundation way is, I think, the fastest way to do it. So when you purchase the pattern, again, you're going to get the rotary instructions and you're going to get this. And this is a sheet showing you all the foundation paper piecing. And it's funny because I'll have people purchase the pattern. They're like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this. So, hey, Cindy. Hello from Wisconsin. Hello from Massachusetts. Hello from San Diego. It's a beautiful day here today. It's actually kind of overcast. And so it's like just that nice mix of not too much sun, but not too much cloud. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this. I didn't want you to have to sit here with me while I cut it out, but normally what you would do with a paper piecing pattern is you're going to see there's going to be two different sets of lines. I'm going to hold this close so you can see it. There's going to be the dark line, and then there's going to be this light line around it. And you can see that goes for everything. Here's a full shape. Here's the dark lines all on the inside, and those are your sew lines. And then there's this really light outside line. Now this distance is always going to be 1/4 of an inch. Not always. On my patterns, it's always 1/4 of an inch. I also include a 1-inch square so you can measure to make sure that your pattern is printing at the right size when you print, because sometimes printers will automatically adjust. So what I did is I went ahead and I just cut out the body of the crab for you. So we're going to actually make the body of this crab today. So this is his little body, and you'll see this is the crab that the full piece, and this is just the middle section here that we're going to make together. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on this, and then we're going to use the power of TV, kind of like they do on cooking shows, to quickly make the rest of it so you don't have to sit here while I make the whole thing, okay? So when you're paper piecing, you're always going to be sewing on the side with the dark lines, and the blank side is where all of your fabric is actually going to go. So what we'll do is we'll start making this little guy. Now these are labeled A1, A2, A3, and it goes all the way up to A9. So the number indicates how many different sections you're going to be sewing on here, whereas the letter just indicates this piece. So this is piece A. And in this pattern, I think there's it goes all the way up to piece G. So that's more important later. You'll see when we actually assemble it. Hey, Barb from Ohio. Hey, Lynn. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this little guy together. So we're going to start with piece A1. Now I'm doing mine very, very scrappy. I want this to be kind of a rainbow quilt. I think I shared earlier with this awesome quilt show on, I think it was Wednesday, I did the tour of the quilting studio and I showed you all my little jars full of scraps. So this is all I'm using for this quilt. So I'm going to be making an orange yellow colored crab today. So I pulled some scraps out of my jar and I just pressed them real quick. So you can see these are just, I've got like a bigger scrap, you know, I don't know, that's roughly, I don't know, say 4 inches by 5 inches, all the way down to just these little, you know, 1.5 by 1.5 nubs that are missing corners. So that's why I love this crab pattern, because you can really use up all these little pieces. So the first thing you're going to do, and I always tell people too, when you're paper piecing, the first one you do is always the hardest, because you're going to lay it differently than you will all the others. All the others, once you get into the pattern, it's like, okay, fold and flip, fold and flip, fold and flip. This one's a little bit different. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Before you even do this though, so you've cut out your pattern, the first thing you need to do, and I've forgotten to do this, and it's like the worst, you want to change the settings on your machine. So personal preference, I always put my needle in the middle of my foot. So I'm going to switch over to my middle foot setting, and then I'm going to take off the back stitch. You don't need to back stitch. Actually, when you're sewing on paper, it's going to rip it even more, so I wouldn't worry about the back stitch. You're also going to drop your stitch length. I'm taking mine down to about 1.2 millimeters. You want to do that really close, because what that does is it's going to perforate the paper and make the paper really easy to rip off without tearing your stitches. I have forgotten to do this, and then like on that on the Holy Thursday quilt, I forgot to do that for the majority of the sewing I did, and when I ripped all the paper off, it ended up ripping out a lot of my stitches, and I had to go back and redo the sewing, and that was just annoying. You don't want to have to do that. So make sure you set it for just a very short stitch, and you'll be good to go. So okay, let's get started. So you're going to start, like I said, with A1. Now this quilt pattern is set up where there's really only going to be 3 colors of printing on your quilt blocks. You're going to have either just white, and that's indicative of background colors. You're going to have this very dark right here. Those are his 2 eyes. So you're going to use like either your blacks, or I don't know, maybe you're giving your crabs blue eyes. That's okay. And then every other color is just going to be your scrappy pieces. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with my A1, and you'll see that's indicative of right here. We're going to be working on this piece. That's just the side of his face. So I'm, like I said, going to be using oranges and yellows. So I'm going to take one of my little orange scraps. Like I said, this is the tricky one because this is the only one where you're going to be putting this face up. So you start off first, these are your sew lines. You're going to fold it on the sew line like that. So you'll see my sew line is right here, and I'm going to fold it down right on that little teeny tiny A1 line. And now on the back of it, if I fold this down, I can see roughly where my 1/4 inch is. So I've got it on my A1 line. I'm going to completely cover. So like if I hold this up to the window, I can see that A1 piece, including that allowance down here, is completely covered by that little orange scrap that I've got. So I will take this and I'm going to line that up there. So I've got about 1/4 inch sticking up. Okay, and remember my fabric is facing forward just on this first piece. And then I have an eyeball coming up next. So I've got some black here that I'm using. Now this is where you're going to start that repetitive pattern. You're going to be taking your right side of your fabric, and the right side is going to go down, and you're going to line that up again, so you have about 1/4 inch. And again, this is all rough estimate. Some people exactly measure. I don't. Personal preference. I also sew over pins, and I know that's another no-no, but personal preference. So you've got your roughly 1/4 inch sticking up, okay? And now you're just going to hold on to it, and you're going to fold it back up. And I'm going to sew this tiny little line right here, okay? So hopefully you guys can still see. I'm going to drop this down, and we're going to put a stitch in right there. And this is very, very close together. It's completely puncturing the paper, which is great. I'm going to cut that. And now I'm going to open that up, and you'll see it's attached to the paper. Now this one is very delicate, especially because this first stitch is so small. You don't want to yank or pull. So I just finger press. I don't have an iron out at all. Because this pattern is so tiny, I finger press the whole thing. You know, if you have a bigger pattern, like when I did the Mary and Jesus quilt, I had a very small iron next to me, and I would just very quickly, just press the fabric. It was easier. But this one, I'm just using my fingernails, and I'm just going to smooth it out. Okay. So now I have, and you have, if you're working along with me, you have something that looks like this. You've got this long piece of black, and you've got your orange. So we're going to trim it up a little bit. So take my scissors. I've got my little scrap bin. I'm just going to drop the scraps in there from the side. So all I'm doing is trimming along the edge here to make that flat edge here. Okay. So now I'm going to come back, and I'm going to see, you're going to go to the next line. So we folded on the A1 line. Now we're going to fold on the A2 line. Okay. So I'm going to fold down on my A2. And just like we did last time, we're going to leave 1/4 inch. Again, rough estimate. I'm going to snip that fabric. It's probably more like 1/3 inch. That's okay. So I've got my black. I've got my fold, and you'll see how that sticks up just a little bit. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to put another scrap on. I'm going to put another little piece of orange. Okay. So now this is where you become that right sides together, and you're going to fold back. Right sides together, you're going to fold back. This is where it becomes much more of a consistent process. So I put my right sides together. I'm gonna open my paper up and I'm gonna put a little tiny stitch right here. I keep glancing at the comments to make sure you guys don't have questions yet. This is awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna put my little stitch in there. Again, I'm only getting in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I got 9 stitches in at just over 1 millimeter. So you see, we're working with a very, very small space. Cut it, open it. You're gonna be very gentle with this section here. Fold it back, finger press that, and you'll see there, you can see he's starting to take shape. So now we have a little bit of our crab forming already. Which way does he go? That way. He goes that way. Okay, so now we'll fold on the A3 line and we're just gonna keep making our way. And just for reference, we're gonna go from, I'm up to A3, we're gonna go through A9. So I'll go through this a little quick here. So here's a question, when is this over? Oh, Erin, this is gonna be recorded. So if you need to jump off, you can absolutely feel free to pick it up later. That's the nice thing about these Facebook Live videos is they record. Okay, so this one's a bit longer. So you'll see my A3, fold on the A3 line. I have a little bit extra, I'm gonna snip that off to about 1/4 of an inch. This starts to go really quick when you start to make this repetitive pattern. So I've got my black, I'm gonna stick a little black line on, adjust that. So you're gonna line up your blacks. Hopefully this starts to look a little consistent here. Got your black on there. You're gonna put your quick stitch. I'm gonna go backwards on that one. I missed my first stitch. Okay, I've got the black. I'm gonna fold down on the next line and I'm gonna trim, and we'll be putting our last one on this section. So you see this starts to go pretty darn quick. I'm gonna do a yellow one this time. Mix it up a little bit. Okay, so fold on that last A4 line. There's your A5 sticking up. That's a little bit too much. I'll trim that back down. And we'll sew there. I like putting on the next section because when you fold on the A5 line, he really starts to get his little face. He doesn't look like too much yet, except just a couple little stripes of color, which I don't think look like much. Okay, so I'm gonna fold on that one. You'll see now I have all this extra fabric, so I'm just gonna come and I'm going to trim that off straight down the side. So now you'll see you'll have something that looks kind of like this, okay? So now we're gonna go, you see we've gone A1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're more than halfway done with the body. Now we're gonna fold just below the A6 line. So this is where you are gonna have, when you fold it, you're gonna have a lot of extra scraps sticking up. You're gonna trim all this off. Again, 1/4 of an inch, rough estimate. So I'm just gonna snip all those little pieces into my trash. I've got my nice clean line, fold. There's my rough 1/4 inch. I'm gonna do, let's do orange down here. Yeah, that piece is big enough. So you can use the tiniest little scraps. That's why I love these jars. They just come in so handy for this quilt. Okay, so line those up, right sides together, tops matching, and we will stitch this one on here. Now this one, I'm gonna show you when you stitch this on, and I'll show you what I'm doing here in a minute. You're actually, this time, when you have diagonal lines, ooh, see I'm talking and sewing and I just sewed that crooked. That's okay. I'm gonna fix that real quick here. The nice thing is I went in the line, so I can just restitch right on that line. You're gonna sew through the paper allowance space, and I'll show you what I mean here with that. Cut that. I'm gonna hold this up close for you to see. So if you can see here, this is my little crab. I've actually sewn over where the allowance is on each of those sides. So I actually pretended almost like this black line. I didn't start here, I started down here. So my allowance comes all the way up. And what I was saying, I accidentally sewed too close here. So I just scooted over and sewed here. That wasn't a problem. Luckily I sewed on this side into the fold. So when you flip it, you'll see when I fold it, you're not even gonna see that mistake stitch. But you can see he's starting to take shape now. He's getting a little bit more of a face. So you're gonna finger press that down. Come back to my little scrap bin. I'm gonna trim off this extra on this side. I'll save this chunk. That's still a good piece I can reuse. I'm gonna fold down on my A7. That's still sticking up a little bit too much. Again, you don't wanna go more than maybe like 1/4 of an inch again. So you're gonna trim that off. And now we are down to this little gray square here. Again, I'm doing mine with all low volume. Mine are all a mix of low volumes. If you can see that, I've just pulled all my grays, and I want this to have a super, super scrappy look. So I've got a little bit here. That might be too little of a bit. We'll go with this little bit here. I'm gonna put this little piece here. So I've got a weird angle, no problem. You just trim that off. And I'm gonna stitch this down. And again, you're gonna be starting on the allowance side. You're gonna sew right over that allowance, right along that gray line. You're gonna pull this one up. And so you can see, I'm tugging on it a little bit more now, and it's really starting to hold because it's starting to take shape. He's really starting to form into a little crab. So I'm gonna trim those, and you'll see the whole front. And now he really is starting to, you can actually start to see, again, this piece is right here. You can see how he's starting to take shape, okay? So now we're gonna add the big body. So you're gonna fold right here on the bottom of your A8, come down, and this is where like, oh, it looks kind of ugly. Just trim it up. You're gonna have a couple pieces sticking out about 1/4 of an inch on each side. I'm gonna give him a yellow body. So I'm gonna make sure with this one, now you'll see you wanna make sure, this is a good one here. So I brought a small scrap, and I wanna show you how to do this because I've made a mistake. Barb, what size needle am I using? I'm actually sewing with a denim needle. I've been making masks all day, and I was just being lazy, and I never switched out my needle. So this is a heavy duty denim. I don't remember what the number is on it, but it's the one meant for heavy duty sewing. I would recommend, you don't need a heavy duty needle if you're using thin paper. This is just really thin printer paper. Like I just buy the cheap stuff over at Walmart to do stuff like this with, because again, you want it to be easy to tear. I don't like to sew on tissue paper. To me, that's too thin. I had an instructor once who she liked to do that. Again, you're gonna find a personal preference for you. So looking at this, you'll see if I sew this fabric on this way, here's what's gonna happen. If I sew it, I'm gonna be short. Okay, so you wanna make sure you think ahead when you're using scraps. What I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna sew this piece on an angle. So I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna move it down to about here, and I'm gonna test that fold. So I'm gonna see if I stitch right there, will it cover? And it will. You'll see if I fold it that way, it'll just fit, okay? So it'll just fit, but it works. It'll totally work. So I'm gonna get this one stitched up here. I feel like I need to remember to shrug. I tend to sew like this, and after a couple hours of that, my shoulders are so sore. Okay, let's see if I did that right. Yep, perfect. Okay, so you'll see now when I do this, I can fold this back and it fits. Okay, so you're gonna finger press that down, and you are gonna trim off the excess just like before. Now you'll see this side looks still like I can use this yellow chunk like we did. Remember how earlier those itty bitty pieces we had left? You can save that. This is too small, so I'm just gonna cut this one right into the scrap bin. Let's see. What size needle am I using? Oh, we talked about that one. How do I keep my neck from cramping? You know, I try to obviously take breaks. I try to do this a lot because, like I said, I tend to hunch. You know, we have my son, when he was little, he had one of those little bathtubs that goes in your bathtub. So that came with a little, I don't know, like a little bench for mom to sit on. I thought it was really cute. So sometimes I'll even put that underneath my machine, and that'll lift my machine up. And I find if I'm sewing it more of an eye level, I don't do the crouching tiger thing. So we'll trim this last piece off. We'll put our one more piece of gray on. Let's see, we'll do this gray this time. And then I'll show you how we're going to assemble the crowd. Because like I said, I don't want you to have to sit here with me while I sew all the way through G. The process though for getting through G is going to be the exact same. Like I said, once you get that very first one on, just because that process is a little bit different, you'll be able to quickly go through it. So I'm going to trim this guy up, and then I'm going to show you what he looks like. Finger press that line. Ta-da! So there's my little crab. So that's his body. That's his little body piece. You'll see there, that's that guy right there. Okay? All right, so I feel like this is like those cooking shows, you know, where they're like, here's how you make the buns, and you put them in the oven, and then they open the oven and the buns are done. So fast forward, we've sewn all of them. Here we go. Okay, so here's all of our pieces. I'm gonna move all this out of the way so you can see what we've got. Here's piece A. I worked on this guy this morning. Here's C, G, and you'll see what I'm doing is I'm putting them in the order D that I am gonna assemble him. This is one of the most common questions I get on this pattern is I'm having trouble putting him back together. And that's because some of the claws, because the crab is kind of like a mirror image of himself, he can be a little bit more confusing to assemble than some other pieces where they're not so symmetrical. So his symmetry can make things a little confusing. But you'll see here's my little crab. Hopefully you can see him laid out here. So we're just gonna slowly start assembling him together. So we're gonna start with pieces A and C. So here's my piece A that we made. Here's the little crab body, right? And then here is piece C. Now remember we talked last time, these are your 1/4 inch lines right here. So we're just gonna put, again, right sides together. Always sew right sides together. You're gonna line that up. And then something I like to do, I'm gonna grab a pin. I didn't bring my pin cushion over. I like to just double check it. So again, this is personal preference. This is where I like the accuracy to really come in. I like to put a pin through one corner, and I'll show you what that looks like and make sure it comes out the other. And so here's a great example why. So you'll see I put the pin through this corner, and technically it should come right through the corner on the other side. And it didn't. It's off just a little bit. For me, I like my lines to be super clean. So I'm gonna pull that out, and I'm gonna make sure I can see through here. I can see through the fabric, and I'm gonna line that pin right up there. So now it's coming right corner to corner. So now I know that those two corners are perfectly lined up. And I'm gonna smooth this side down, and now that should be much more consistent. I'm gonna pop a pin through this side to check. And I won't check my corners on all these, I promise, because I don't want you to have to sit here while I do that. I just want to show you like some good best practice. So again, I'm gonna move that guy down, double check that corner that it lines up. Perfect, there we go. Okay, so that's where I want it to be. So then I'll just take, I love these little grippy guys. If you guys ever use these things are awesome. I'm just gonna stick one on there to hold that in place, pull my pins out, and I am just gonna sew directly on that black line. I guess maybe just directly, just to the side of it a little bit, just to give it, you know, like you sew like a non-generous allowance. I'm gonna stitch that down. Give it a cut. There we go. So you can see his angles are super clean. Those points are coming together. And it's turning out good. It's turning out good so far. Okay, so then we're gonna go A. So now we've got C, we're gonna stick on D. Same thing, check your corners. I always check them. I know I told you I wasn't gonna do this. I'm gonna make you check my corners. Of course, if you're watching this live, you can always just pop this on, pop it on hold, and you can come back and fast forward through these parts. But I'm gonna keep this, I wanna use this one, so I wanna make sure he looks really sharp. I'll check my corners. Perfect, perfect, that one's right on. So again, I'm gonna lock it in place. So this is a good time now to talk about what do you do with all that extra paper. So you'll see, this side is clean. It's gonna be nice and easy to sew. This side, you've got all this chunky stuff right here, right? And you're like, I'm not sure what to do with that. I choose to rip off a little bit of that paper now because it's gonna make it easier to sew. So I'm gonna pull, you'll see I'll pull the corners off here. I'm gonna tear this off, and I'll show you up close what I'm doing here in a second when I get this paper off. And this rips off so easy because I've sewed my stitches. So what I did is I pulled off just a little bit on each corner here. So you see that way when I open my seams, I like to open my seams when I sew, again, personal preference. It makes it a little bit flatter. When I open those, there's not as much bulk of paper underneath, okay? So I'm gonna stitch this down. Again, just kind of hugging a smidge to that right of that 1/4 inch allowance. attached. He's really coming along. Okay, so same thing now. You're gonna come back. Again, I just finger press my seams while I'm doing this part because he's so small. I feel like you can get away with that with tiny patterns. Okay, so I've got my little crab guy here. Let's see, what's next? So after we do D, we're gonna do piece B. I think that's this one here. That's E, let's see here. B is on the top. Okay, so you grab E next, and the E goes on the side. That's gonna be his little feet. Line up my corners. And to be honest, if I didn't have you guys sitting here waiting, I might actually hit this with an iron. I might press this now just to kind of smooth some of those pieces out. It's starting to get a little bit bulky. Paper tends to get bulkier. That's why I would never sew with a heavy duty paper. Like sometimes you can get like that nice 30-pound paper if you're printing out really pretty printables or anything like that. I would not use that at all because it's just going to make it that much more bulk to sew through. But this guy, he's pretty forgiving. Let's see here. Oh, that one's a little low, so we're going to scooch this paper up a little. Perfect. So grab my corners, I'm going to smooth it out, find the center, pin it. And come back and stitch. This is how I sew through my fingers because I tend to get my fingers so close. You know, one time I was sewing on an old-fashioned machine and it didn't have the safety mechanism for the release and my finger got stuck under the needle and the machine locked in place. And thank God, truly, thank God I had my phone nearby. I had to call a neighbor and she came over with wire cutters and she cut the needle off the machine and we were able to pull the needle out from the top and then pull it out of my finger and get my finger out from the machine. But if you ever want to know what panic feels like, it's literally sewing yourself in place to a sewing machine. I think I honestly had like the shakes afterwards for like an hour. That was utterly terrifying. Okay, so here's your little crab. It's coming along good. I'm gonna be back in like less than a second. I'm gonna press them real quick. Again, it's just a good way to really smooth out a lot of those seams, pressing them open to take away a lot of that bulk. You know, I wish I had a tiny iron that I can pull it over to stay on screen with you, but hopefully you can still hear me when I'm yapping from the other side of the room. Okay. So he's coming along well. We're going to put the top piece on now. You can see we're almost done here. Now, here's a tip. Piece B has a long section on it. You'll see this whole long section here. So I pin that to keep it smooth. Otherwise, what can happen is it'll shift around when you're trying to sew it, and that gets very, it gets annoying when you're just trying to sew. Plus, it doesn't sew clean because if this starts to shift, then your pattern, especially if you have a print that's a directional print, like this one is, you can see these are all little snowflakes in perfectly alignment. It'll start to curve. So I recommend just pinning long pieces in place. Okay. So I'm going to put his back legs on here. This is where it starts to sound like a broken record, right? Check the corners. And I don't know if other people check their corners. I always do. This is just a good habit I've gotten into. And it takes seconds to do that. We'll check these corners. Nope, that one's way too high. You can see because I was rushing when I was cutting this morning, and so I didn't cut on the lines. I think I failed my kindergarten test there. Okay, my corners are lined up. I'll give that a little tug to find my center. I'm gonna clip. Okay, let's put our stitch in. Such a loud sound going through paper, doesn't it? You can really hear every puncture it's making. Okay, so now you can take this pin out and you'll see what that's done is it's now held this in place and it's kept it nice and smooth. So now when you pull your paper off, you're not going to have either this side or this side stretched at all. So that's a really easy way to handle that. Okay, so now we're going to we've got our little crab guy. You can still see him if I put him down now. We just have the two edge pieces to put on. And again, you'll see these edge pieces are just long strips. So definitely you pin these. This is a choice here. You can take the paper off, right? Because it's just one long piece and you can just stick that piece on there and sew. You can leave the paper on, personal preference. I'm gonna leave mine on just because this is a paper piecing demo. But I hope that makes sense. Because this is just one long piece, you can really just attach it. There's really no seams to be lining up on this one as much. But I'm gonna check my corners. We could see checking my corners again. I'm just popping a pin through the black line on this side and making sure it comes out. You'll see again, I'm off on this one. And it may seem like it's so small, like, oh my gosh, Jen, that's like a 1/16 of an inch. But you know, a 1/16 of an inch 4 times and suddenly you're off a 1/4 inch. If I did my math right. Math has never been my strong point. I'm not gonna pretend it is. Let's see there. Perfect, okay. Get my middle piece on. We'll come through, and then we only have one piece left after this, and then we'll start taking the paper off, and he'll be done. Okay, so now again, I'm gonna open up my seams, because I'm coming across a seam here. Again, you can press your seams to the side. This is one of those joys of quilting. You're going to choose what works best for you. Again, I recommend opening them just because it's going to reduce some of the bulk. Especially because this crab is so small, you've got a lot of seams in one place. Okay, and you'll see there's the bottom, those little legs. And now we will stick this last piece on. And I'm going to show you what I meant by how you cannot pin this one, okay? So because this is just one long strip, as long as you get the size correct, which you know this is the right size, you can actually just come on here and stitch this on directly. So on this one, I'm just going to line it up and I'm going to sew right down. Running out of my bobbin thread. That's what my machine is yelling at me. I think I've got enough to finish this stitch here. Perfect. I ran out of bobbin thread. Oh my goodness. Let's try that again. Here's a note: if you're ever showing a class on how to sew, make sure your bobbin is full. These are all my leftover bobbins of unmatched colors. This one's yellow, so that'll actually be perfect for this guy since we're sewing him in yellow anyway. Let's try that one more time. Right sides together. I need some lounge music in the background. Our last piece on our crab here, and then we'll take all the paper off. Okay. There you go. I'm going to finger press that down just to smooth my seam out a little bit there. And there's your little crab. This way. So paper removal is really easy. Some tips that I would give you for this one. I always thumb down. You're going to pinch the corners before you rip. So you don't want to just yank because you are going to rip your seams off. So just kind of hold your seam down on the corner and then pull. And you'll see this just comes off so easy because I've put my stitches so close together. You're going to come in, you're going to take off obviously the paper on all of your seams. These little long ones come off real quick. So once he's peeled, you're just going to come back one more time and you're going to press him down and you will have a complete crab. So yeah, so thank you, Joey. I think he's adorable too. This is a really fun pattern to make. I'm excited. I'm hoping as part of this quilt along, starting on the 1st, Gosh, I think I want to do 56. So I don't know if I'll make all 56. I hope to get there. I want to do a rainbow quilt. I've never done a rainbow quilt before. So heaven knows I have enough scraps. So I'll be making a rainbow quilt with you on this. I hope you guys join me for that. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. This video will just continue to live on forever, as long as Facebook does. And I am more than happy to respond to them. I do encourage you to totally join our quilt along starting on the 1st. We've got a separate Facebook group set up for that, so we're all going to be crabby together. So thank you for joining me this morning, and if any other questions, let me know, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you guys in person soon. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.